Good day, good morning, good evening, wherever you are found in this beautiful place called Earth. Welcome to the Self-Care Diaries. I hope you are well. I am welcome today with Busi. It's so great to have you with me today. I was interviewed on your podcast, which I think is so amazing. It's Self-Care with Busi, so I thought it was only
Yes.
fair and clever to invite you to come and speak to us on the Self-Care Diaries. Busi, welcome.
Thank you so much, Lee. I'm so happy to be here, to be having this conversation with you.
Amazing, amazing. You hail all the way from, you South African, but you're living in Canada, is that correct?
Yes, so I'm South African. I immigrated to Canada beginning of 2019. So January 2019, I started living in Canada. Yes. I'm in the Toronto area, Ontario province.
Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. What we now spring, so you must be autumn.
We're fall now. Yeah, I'm getting a bit sad. I feel like this year summer has been so different. Like last year we got to do a lot of things. We were out, and I really got to enjoy summer. And now it feels like summer is over and I'm thinking, what did I do this year? Like I'm not ready for summer to go, but the temperatures are definitely starting to go
Dropping.
down.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and I mean, for those that are watching this, not at this current time, but maybe in future, you're referring to COVID times. So having
Times, yeah.
indoors, we're having to keep safe and away from the lurgies.
Yeah. Social distancing. But it's one of those things, like sometimes you'll see other people, we're all going through a pandemic, but we're dealing with it in different ways. And some people are going outside and doing way more things than I feel comfortable right now. But it is what it is.
Interesting. So, who is Busi? Tell us who Busi is.
So Busi is a mom. I'm a mom to two boys. I have an 8-year-old and almost 4-year-old. I grew up in a township called Katlehong in South Africa, and I went on to study. I studied at the University of Pretoria, and I studied IT. So I went into the IT field, and I work in the IT industry to this day. But I just got drawn to the whole self-care space. I think growing up, just having to learn how to best take care of myself, because I think for the most part, like a lot of people probably are, I've been so much of a giver. Like I was that person who would very easily give even when I had nothing to give. But as long as I'm trying to make somebody else feel okay, like as long as somebody else was okay, I felt like, okay, yes, then I feel really good. But I was doing a very terrible job at taking care of my own self. And I think when I would face very difficult times, it didn't work out that great for my own mental health and overall health. And that's where self-care with Busi came up. And I thought, okay, I think I started sharing more on a video level. Let's share videos here and there. And then I decided, why not start a podcast? It's something that I totally can do, have those conversations. And I'm not saying I have everything figured out, but as I learn through different things and I connect with people and I learn certain things along the lines of self-care, that's what I share. And when I lived in South Africa, I volunteered at SADAG. There was a point where I went through training with SADAG and I became a lay counselor. And it's one of those conversations when I bring up, people always think, oh, I always thought you have to be doing something related to mental health to be able to go and volunteer with SADAG. But I was in IT. They went through different trainings and they give a lot of support to be able to equip you at lay counselor. So that's what I like doing, I think, on my, I won't say spare time, but outside of the IT space, I'm a self-care advocate.
Amazing. Yeah, so many exciting things that you've been doing on social media. And the latest one that I loved was where you were wiping the window. You were like, it's easier. I loved it. It was so cool. So people must really go hit you up and go and look at your Instagram and your Facebook.
Thank you.
They must really have a look. So what value do you feel you bring to the world?
I think it's in that teaching people that taking care of yourself is important. I think it's one of the things that is you can easily neglect it. Go through the world, you're doing your work, you're fulfilling all the roles that you take on in life, whether you're a mom, you're a dad, you're a teacher, whatever profession you're in, you can be stretching yourself so thin and you forget about yourself and the fact that you do need to replenish and take care of yourself for you to give your best to whatever it is that you're doing in the world. So I think that's the big thing that I bring to the world, just that reminder to people. Taking care of yourself is important, and it's not a selfish act. You're not being selfish if you're prioritizing your own needs.
For sure. I love Audre Lorde's saying, which goes, caring for myself is not self-indulgent, it is self-preservation. And that is an act of political warfare. I love that.
Yeah.
So if we talk about the culture, I mean, we can talk about the culture in South Africa, but I think that the culture about how women, I think white women in South Africa, a lot of us have had black women looking after our children, and I think that a lot of black children understood that you had to come second. The white kids had to come first because that was mom's job, and mom was looking after these white kids. And I think that even ahead of the white kids, I mean, the African nannies that we've had have put white kids ahead of their own self-care. I can't say that my mother, I grew up with a nanny, and I can't say that having had a nanny, my mother had any idea of what self-care looked like either. Like she still put my father ahead of us, and definitely ahead of herself. So I think that culture, you know, the culture of putting other people ahead runs through so many different stratas, you know.
True.
I'm not saying that the white people in our country have it the same as black people in our country, because I don't agree with that. But what I have noticed is that women have struggled with what a sense of self-care is, and I work with CEOs, men and women. I work with, you know, C-suite people. I work with leaders of industry, and the men have almost like, when they start seeing me, I go, so tell me, what's your self-care practice? And they're like, what do you mean?
What are you talking about? Yeah.
And then what self-care is, and they're like, oh yeah, like I do all the physical stuff, but the emotional and mental, that's why I'm seeing you. And I went and I thought about it. I was like, how come is self-care intrinsic for men? Like, it's actually, they know it.
Nobody needs to teach them how to do anything. That's true. I was having a conversation with my husband. I'm working on the next season for my podcast, and I'm thinking, okay, I want to have these kinds of conversations, and who can I have this conversation with? And I'm just thinking of people, and it kept being females that are popping up, because you're seeing things that people are doing in that space, and you're like, oh, this would be the perfect person to have a conversation with this. And then it's like, well, are you just is self-care just a female thing? Why aren't you talking to any males? And I thought to myself, there aren't any that I know of who are putting out content that grabs my attention, and I think of them when I talk about a certain thing, be it maybe goal setting, because that can be a form of self-care, and they're working through, that's basically what they talk about as the brand. And I think, oh, that's the perfect person I can speak to about this. And I found that very interesting as well. It was one of those thoughts where it's like, women are opening up all these dialogues and spaces where we can have these conversations, because there's a need there. We need to learn how to do it and not feel guilty about taking care of ourselves. So that's definitely something that I find it quite interesting, and I would love to have more dialogue with guys to understand from their perspective how they view self-care for themselves and the women that are in their lives, because it definitely doesn't look the same for everybody else. And I can't remember if it's a video that I watched, but there was something that I was watching, and we had a conversation with it with my friends a couple of weeks ago. But we were talking about how men and women are viewed differently in the workplace. So if you look at policies that they'll have in place for things such as maternity and paternity leave, one of my friends was saying in her workplace they want to change it to just parental leave. So don't assign it to a gender, because you're already just saying the woman's place, because the woman will likely get the longer, maybe 3 months, 6 months, whatever the policy of the company looks. guy literally gets a couple of days, especially in South Africa. It's not a norm to say if you're going to get 6 months of mat leave, it's a parental thing. Whoever is the main caregiver, maybe the woman, if she has to give birth and she wants to be home for 2 months, she can stay at home for 2 months, and then the rest of the 4 months, the guy stays at home and takes care of the baby. But they've already decided that the woman's role and place after you've had a child is to go stay at home and take care of the baby. And then we also went on to speak about things around the household, that it's not very normal in a lot of households to say the man maybe cleans and does the laundry. They always have to be pulled in as a help. Can you help me, take the trash out or clean the laundry or wash the dishes and do all of these things? And I think that's where it's still putting the woman in the place of you have to be everything to everyone at all times. And then for guys, they kind of just go about doing what they feel they need to be doing in that moment. They feel tired, they rest. As a female, you come back from work, you could be feeling tired, but then there's so many other things that still are your job to be doing. So there's definitely a very huge difference there. And I think on the woman front, we're all facing a lot of things at the same time, regardless of race. You could be white, you could be black, but there's a lot of things that we're going through as females when it comes to self-care.
I would love you to go and look at, if you're not on already, but the Feminine Leadership Online Summit. We did a summit at the end of August. It's still running, but there's a Facebook group, and I would love for you to join and pitch that, what you not pitch but share what you just said now about the gender assigned roles for parenting, whereas it should really be, I love that both men and women as a family should decide, not the bloody company or government.
Because you know what works best for your household, and it might not necessarily mean it's the woman staying home longer, but that's how companies have just placed it. This is what needs to happen, and we all just carry on doing things that way because it's been done that way for the longest time. Yeah, but I'll definitely check out the group.
Feminine Leadership Online Summit. Okay, so then what is your favorite self-care practice? I mean, I know
I float from different things depending on how I'm feeling. Sometimes self-care for me can be listening to music while I take a bath. Sometimes it can be just being in the bath, no music, no kids, nothing. It's just me and the bubbles and myself. I'm just in my own thoughts, just unwinding for the day. Sometimes self-care for me can look like I have a coloring book, an adult coloring book. If I had it near me, I'd show, but that's self-care to me sometimes. Sometimes I just feel like taking my colors and just putting something on paper, and that looks very beautiful for me. Sometimes self-care can be going for a jog, putting my headphones on, maybe listening to whatever podcast that I enjoy that uplifts me, or even music that uplifts me. So it's in all these little things that I do here and there. And sometimes it can even be cooking for my family. I enjoy cooking when I feel like I want to cook. It's something that I really enjoy. And when I do have the time to cook for my family, that's something that makes me feel really good. And it's a form of self-care to me because I love cooking. I'd say there's a sense of, there's some therapeutic thing to it for me. I don't know if it's the creation of the food, and I don't know what, but I just enjoy doing it. And it's different things. So depending on where I am and how I'm feeling, maybe sometimes I just need to chat and I have to chat to my husband, or I'm chatting to a friend or something. So it depends on the moment and what's going on, but so many things. I do a lot of things.
I love that you spoke about different aspects of self-care, because often people think it's chocolates, wine, and bubble baths and massage
spas.
And whilst that is one form of self-care, it's, for me, I like to say those are celebration of the harder, the deeper digging aspects of self-care, where we ourselves and we find support around emotional and mental self-care. And the bubble baths and manicures are celebrations or rewards for doing the harder stuff.
Yeah, definitely.
So if you had your 16-year-old self in front of you, what advice would you give her with regards to self-care?
Whoa, self-care as a 16. I think the biggest thing I would say is don't stress yourself so much about things. Like, you're young, have fun, just relax, go out with friends. Because I think as a 16-year-old, like, I think I was one of those kids who were I was constantly thinking about grades and school and doing good at school. So even when I look back, like weekends, I was never really one of those teens that was hanging out at the mall a lot of the times. Um, and I think a huge part of that was my mom and my parents just growing up. They always just drilled, you need to focus, you need to do this so you can get to that place. And if you're going to be out here doing all of these things, you might end up, I don't know, like doing things that you shouldn't be doing at the age that you're at. So I think I wasn't out going out. By talking about going out, I'm not talking about, the clubbing at night and just staying out really late, but just normal. You go to the mall, maybe you watch a movie with your friends. Those are the things that I would say, Busi, just go out there, relax. Like, don't take things so seriously. You're doing okay. You'll be fine even with school, and you'll still get to do all these other things that you want to be doing, and you don't have to stay at home all the time, like during weekends. Just go out there and just have fun. I think that's what I'd tell my 16-year-old self. And it's something I also try and help my nieces do, like, because they're around the teen years. So it's just, have fun. Don't coop yourself up in the house too much and not explore things and do different things while you're at this age, because time doesn't stop, and you look back and you think, oh, I've been working and I've been, striving for this and I've been trying to do that. And have you had fun? Like, what were you doing? What else were you doing along the way? So yeah, that's what I'd say to my 16-year-old self.
I love that. And if we had to speak to the person in 10 years' time, what would you like to say to her?
10 years time. So my 40-year-old self. I would say, so I'm speaking to myself right now, right?
Yeah.
So I think I would say to my 30-year-old self, I love how you came into a stage in your life where you started really doing all the things that you wanted to be doing, not letting fear take over and cloud anything and any idea that you might have. But you'd have an idea and you would run with it. You see where it takes you. You learn whether you grow from it or whether you realize that it's something that you need to change and not do anymore. But from every experience and everything that you've tried to do, everything you want to do that you take on, you're learning something, you're growing, and it's just a beautiful thing. And I will hope that my 40-year-old self will still be doing the same. Just taking on things, you feel like you want to do something, you're scared, you do it anyway, even if you feel like, oh my gosh, like, what if I fail? So what? You're going to learn something. And I'd just be praising and celebrating my 30-year-old self for doing that. And yeah, keep doing it. Keep doing it.
I love that. So if there was one thing self-care that you could pass on to your boys, what would it be? It doesn't have to be one thing.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing would be learning to listen to themselves, like listen to their gut. And I do think that is the very big form of self-care, because you find yourself doing things that you don't want to do, doing things you shouldn't be doing, because you're trying to maybe please somebody else, or you're trying to, not hurt somebody else's feelings, and you end up hurting yourself and neglecting yourself. And that's not it's not a very great place to be at. So if they can get to a point where the biggest self-care, if there's one thing that they're doing, and that was allowing themselves to listen to themselves and not feel guilty for doing things that feel the most right to them, as long as they're not, you're not doing anything illegal, you're not like hurting anyone else intentionally, but you're honoring your own feelings, your own self, and whatever that is telling you in that moment, that you're able to honor that without any feelings of guilt. I think that's the biggest one.
Yeah, amazing. And I think that a lot of men we can learn from, because I think they don't have that guilt. It's
Yeah,
just been raised that boys must do what boys do, and they come first because they pay the salaries and put the roof
true.
on their head. So they have, that's my research, is that I've seen that the men have it's like the guilty about what, like they don't,
True.
whereas women have.
And the way that they even approach so many things. So I remember when I started working, I was after university, I worked for a company based in Amsterdam in the Netherlands. So in that program, that initial year, there were so many people from different parts of the world in the same training hub for this company. And when we'd go through different activities, so you'd be given a technology, you have to go learn about it, and then you come back, you present it to a scenario to say, this customer maybe had this problem, this is how I would use the solution to solve that problem. And then you'd get questions from the group, from the managers. They give you questions based on whatever it was you were talking about. And I used to find that females, and we had a discussion about this at some point after the program, that so many of us would say, if I would go back to the self that started that program as a female, I would literally tell myself to just be confident in what you know. Don't be afraid to say something just because you think maybe you might be wrong, but you're not really sure. You think you remember the fact correctly, but you're going to hold back and say, but I'm not 100% sure. Whereas with the guys, they literally could say something that was totally wrong, and they say it with the most confidence. And if somebody does call them out and say, but that is not correct, it's not accurate, this thing doesn't do XYZ, then it's just oh, okay, no, my mistake. But we were always so, we wanted to be perfect. Like, we wanted to do everything right, everything perfect. And I saw another study, well, not study, but I think it's in New Zealand or Switzerland, I can't really remember, but they recently passed legislation that companies cannot pay women less than men if they're in the same role.
Yeah.
And it's one of those things where you're like, okay, yes, we're celebrating, that's really great news, but how was it still okay in this day and age to say you're both going to be hired as maybe these engineers, but we'll pay the guy more just because they're a guy, and there's nothing else that separates the two of you? So women on so many fronts, and I think all of these things, they infiltrate they infiltrate, and they get into other spaces that affect how we end up seeing ourselves in the world, how we end up treating ourselves, and allowing the world in general to treat us, because we're so used to like taking second in so many things, and just, you have to quiet yourself down, maybe don't be too loud, or don't do this and don't do that. And it affects so many things when it comes to us just being able to take care of ourselves, even if that taking care of yourselves means you're standing up for yourself and you're speaking out in a space where it would be looked at as, why are you maybe being bossy, or you're being this and you're being that. So there's so many things that affect the way that we end up taking care of ourselves, and we need to look at it in a much broader view than just, you need to take the time, and because there's so many things affecting us, and a lot of them we don't even realize that there's things happening in our environments, whether you're in the workplace, you might even be in a mall, but just because you're a woman, there's things that might affect you in a certain way, and that can impact the way that you end up looking after yourself in the world.
I love that, because the one aspect of my tripod model that I teach is boundary setting, and how boundary setting is such a valuable part of self-care, because it teaches other people how to treat us.
Mm-hmm.
But often people don't understand that setting boundaries is not only about setting boundaries with other people, it's setting boundaries with ourselves as well. It's a dual exercise, if I can put it that way.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
how powerful it is to get out of toxic relationships and like drama free triangle, to drama free relationships, and really just taking good self-care is not just a physical thing, it's an emotional, mental, spiritual. How do we do that in a
Yes.
professional space? um yeah, that's really cool. I love that.
Definitely.
So how does your week look going forward? What's your latest passion project?
So I'm still working on, okay, my latest thing. So podcast is still ongoing. I recently started a new YouTube channel, and on there, it's some things are podcast. Like I'll have that on the podcast, and there's a video version of it. And I also have a page called Self Care Globe, where I try and share different forms of self care just to help people discover things that might work for them that they hadn't thought of. Because sometimes you don't know of a practice or something that exists that you could potentially enjoy, and it might help you maybe in relieving, de stressing, or calming your anxiety, however you might be feeling at the time. So that's been one of the biggest things I think that I've been working on. So the Self Care Glow page and my personal YouTube page, where it's still self-care, self-care related conversations, just the same theme basically. But yeah, I think the page on Instagram, that's the main thing. That's the one that takes up more of my time outside of my normal work and my new YouTube channel.
Amazing. Well, I just want to thank you for everything that you're doing, in the self-care space, because I really do believe to shift the dial in this, what I call the self-care revolution, it's going to take a whole host of us. And
Yes.
to invite people to please go and listen to your podcast, Self-Care with Busi. That's on Spotify, Apple, wherever they listen to their podcast, you can find it there. And then to go and connect with you on your social media page called
Instagram, Busi_global. So it's BUSI_global.
Global. Okay, brilliant. And is there one last thing you'd like to leave with the viewers today?
I think to everybody who is watching, the one thing that I will want you to think of and take away and remember always on whatever's going on is that you must just always try and be kind to yourself. Just always remember that in everything that's going on, good and bad, just always try and remember to be kind to yourself, because that's going to be the base and the start for everything else that's going to follow, that will allow you to take better care of yourself. So be kind to yourself.
So beautiful. I speak about compassion, and often we think we've got to have compassion for others, but we can't have compassion for others if we don't have compassion for ourselves. And that for me is married with kindness. So how we kind to ourselves. I don't know if you've seen it, it's just a really random thought that just came flying over my brain that I want to share, there's a Netflix program called The Kindness Diaries. Have you heard of it?
No.
Oh my God, it's so amazing. It's this guy, British guy. I don't want to spoil it. Go have a look, but have a box.
I'm going to go look, yeah.
And if you drink in a glass of wine.
I'm definitely going to look for it. What did you say it's called? The Kindness
Diaries.
Oh, the Kindness Diaries. Okay.
It's so beautiful. So beautiful. Busi, from my heart to yours, all the way from South Africa, the land of gold. I believe you used to live just around the corner from me here in Sandton.
Yeah.
We miss you, but we're glad that you're out there and you're happy with your family, and thank you for sharing so generously with us today.
Thank you for having me. Thank you so much, Lee.
Lots of love.
All right, bye.
Thank you, everybody, for listening to this another episode of the Self-Care Diaries. Please feel free to get hold of us on Facebook and come and have a chat to us at the Campfire Conversations, where we will be delving into everything self-care. Have a blessed Sunday. Lots of love. Bye.